Morning guys, welcome back to another weekly outlook. As usual, we're going to start from the monthly doing our top down analysis. Let's get into this. Any questions, just let me know in the comments. Let's quickly go through this monthly. We have our monthly bullish dealing range. That's from this low to this high. We met resistance at this fair value gap and order block. I've been saying that for a while. Now, as we would have expected, usually, right, price goes from liquidity and imbalance to liquidity and imbalances. Okay, so below us here towards this discount, we have plenty of imbalances, right? We have overlapping BPRs, fair value gaps here, order blocks here. This is a quarterly and monthly order block. But before those, we also have this quarterly fair value gap open at this low here. We expect price to move from an imbalance to an imbalance, from premium to discount, right? Or either liquidity towards another source of liquidity. Price, however, has been held at this BPR line here. So this is a quarterly BPR, but also on the monthly, right, we've got this inverse fair value gap here. So you can see where those candle bodies have been held there for quite some time too. So if we jump up to the quarterly, you'll see even clearer as a BPR, like a good year now, right? Candle bodies have failed to close below this BPR point here, from this up imbalance to this open down imbalance, and then we've just stabbed into it quite a few times and price has been held there. We've got this quarterly fair value gap here. Here is the open, which would be our first target because it's our first PDA on the way down. So overall, we seem to be having much more of a bearish reaction at the moment. We've got 21 days to close out this current monthly candle. However, as you can see, we could quite easily still hold this BPR line. Okay, but like I said here, monthly looks to be heading towards the discount and quarterly fair value gap, which is the first target PDA. Now with 21 days, we could quite easily continue down, take this sell side liquidity and into this quarterly fair value gap, and still even then close with our candle body up here. So this won't necessarily stop us from completing this, but price could still stop at this point here. We could have some SMT like before, right, and not complete this. So we've taken that previous month's sell side liquidity and our last month's sell side liquidity as well. So we could well just see a reaction from here, and like I said, price just hold this BPR. But we had to keep this same outlook because we've got this discount zone here. We've got monthly overlapping PDAs, quarterly order block, and quarterly fair value gap. So we would still expect price to go lower. Okay, so let's move on. Any questions, again, just let me know in the comments. Let's move on to the weekly and see how that looks for us. So the weekly, we're having some clear bearish pressure. All right, we have a weekly bearish dealing range from this high to this low. Once we met that resistance, same as the monthly, took the buy side liquidity, we had this bearish reaction, breaking these lows here, right? These swing lows, creating that bearish dealing range. Price then pulled back to a premium, right? We have a weekly order block here with fair value gap. Then we have this inverse fair value gap here that also held price for some time. And then eventually we broke down, leaving behind a bearish fair value gap here, retested, respected, and broke down again. So that equals order flow, right? It's not just higher highs and lower lows, right? Because we're yet to take this low, but we're seeing order flow because we're respecting bearish PDAs, right? And creating that order flow. So what's my expectation of the week? I expect bearish week to form, bearish order flow to continue, right? And to be drawn towards sell side liquidity points like here, the Q1 low, right, so the low of the year, and then of course this quarterly fair value gap. But just for the upcoming week, I'd expect a bearish candle to form, possibly targeting this low here. We'll see where it goes. We'll look for those lower time frame targets like on the daily as well. This is expected. We've already taken the previous week's low, so we do expect some pullback. We expect a pullback into this candle somewhere, right? So on the daily or something, finding some resistance. So this is fine. We're only into Tuesday. I expect some sort of pullback. This candle could close as a bullish one, just completing some sort of pullback before we continue bearish. But if it does find that resistance, then this candle can completely change and the rest of the week forming a bearish candle, right? But given this previous week's bearish candle, the outlook and the respect from this zone here, I'm going to expect this candle to flip to bearish at some point if the lower time frames align. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Let's move on to the daily. What I'll do is I'll refer to this here very quickly. Daily aligns with the weekly, right? Of course it does. We have bearish order flow and dealing ranges because we had bearish order flow and dealing ranges on the weekly. Right, so we can see our most recent bearish dealing range, right, from this low, from this high to this low here. Price has been respecting daily fair value gaps here, which is overlapping with this weekly fair value gap as well. We're creating our lower lows, lower highs as well here, creating our lower lows, right? So what do we have here? As I've said in my previous videos, we have market maker buy model, right? This is our buy side curve, and then we have our sell side curve possibly forming here to come and target this Q1 low, right? So buy side curve, sell side curve for this market maker sell model here. So let's look into this price action. Price has broken below this previous bullish fair value gap and order block, right, which was holding price here for some time until we retested this weekly fair value gap and of course daily fair value gap. Price eventually broke down, right, clearly broke through it. So now this could be retested as resistance. Yesterday we closed out as this doji candle, leaving a fair value gap. So now we have these overlapping PDAs here. For price to target in the short term, price is more than likely to be drawn into this zone here, go from liquidity, April's low, to imbalance. And then we can start targeting liquidity again. Okay, so we have some SMT at this point. Monday's low took out April's low, but it did not on DXY, of course. Let me just show that. So here is that April high here on DXY. Price is yet to take it out. So we have that SMT. That doesn't necessarily mean price is going to reverse and go bullish, of course. However, it may have hinted at this pullback. So it may just be what was needed for the pullback into this fair value gap. So this is a strong zone here, strong PDA here, overlapping for price to use to continue our bearish order flow and our bearish bias and create a typical Tuesday, Wednesday high weekly profile. So when you're going bearish, typically Tuesday or Wednesday is the high of the week before you continue that bearish movement, possibly the rest of Wednesday into Thursday, Friday. Okay. And then of course, if you're going bullish, then it would be Tuesday, Wednesday, low of the week, which is a typical sort of weekly profile. Doesn't always happen. It is a typical weekly profile for you to keep an eye out for. So price is building upwards. We're yet to take that previous daily high and go into that fair value gap. So we'll need to see how price reacts from there on the lower time frame. Clearly, my outlook here is for price to continue bearish, forming a bearish weekly candle. This is the weekly candle here that you can see being made. So price to go and mitigate this zone and then completely flip bearish, turning this candle into a bearish weekly one. To look into today's candle, you can see we've opened up bullish. We're heading for buy side liquidity, so we're protracting into that previous day. We could mitigate this zone here and then for the rest of the day turn bearish. We'll see. Price may just come into this zone, wait for CPI and then turn into a bearish candle tomorrow. Alright, so I think that's enough on the daily. Don't want to confuse, but we have a market maker sell model pattern here currently playing out. We've had a lot of SMT, right? So we'll have to keep an eye out for that, see if DXY completes this pattern first, if we are to continue lower. But at the moment, that pattern is there. This will be our targets down here eventually, quarterly fair value gap, Q1 low. But now in the short term, Monday low, once we mitigate this zone, will likely be that first target. Okay, we'll see this fractal on the lower time frame. So I hope that's clear. Daily's bearish, aligning with the weekly looking bearish, right? So we have a good high time frame back in to go short for this week. Right, so that's the overall message that I'm trying to get through here. So let's go to the lower time frames. Let's go to the 4 hour and see how that looks for us. So of course the 4 hour is not going to be too different from the daily. We can see this mess we had here end of May. Price is now broke down. We have our bearish dealing range here on the 4 hour as well. We've taken that April low. So you can see price looks to be finding a possible bottom here on the 4 hour. Right, we are climbing back up into this zone of our PDAs here. So there's not much to explain on the 4-hour except that we are in a discount. We've taken sell side liquidity and price appears to be pulling back toward a premium. Now, whether we'll make it to the premium, we might just scrape into that bottom half where we've got the inverse fair value gap and the daily fair value gap midline. Right, so that would be probably the furthest target I would expect. We do have this up here on the 4-hour, but the daily PDAs of course take precedence over that, and price could just mitigate these somewhere and continue going lower. So I have that Monday low pointed out as the most likely draw of liquidity for this week if we find our top here and then start going lower. Okay, so let's go down to the 1-hour. So on the 1-hour, I'll just demonstrate sort of this market maker sell model fractal that you can see playing out on the daily, but we're now getting a smaller version for this week on the lower time frames on the hourly. Right, so you can see the 1-hour order flow is bullish at the moment, right, where we took that sell side liquidity, took the April low, then price made this bullish dealing range, right? So from this low to this high, where we broke above this swing high here. Price has now pulled back, respected this inverse fair value gap, and is now continuing bullish from there. And we've also mitigated this Asia range fair value gap here as well, which price is pushing away from. So what we expect price to do now is to continue climbing into this zone here, right? And as I've said here, fair value gap midline and overlapping inverse fair value gap is likely our furthest upside target. And then from there, we're going to want to see price top out, possibly take some buy side liquidity, and then start breaking down, creating our sell side curve on the lower time frame, right? So buy side curve into sell side curve here. So we want to see price build this buy side curve. And as I've said here, the 1 hour is not yet aligned with the higher time frame outlook because the higher time frame outlook is bearish, whereas we've gone into bullish order flow now to complete this potential pullback move on the daily, right? Which is completely normal, of course. So there would have been potential longs into this zone, but it's maybe off the cards because given where price is, we're soon going to take this previous daily high buy side liquidity, which means we'll already be in this daily fair value gap. And it may be a bit negative to see price continue going higher. If the right formations happen, it's possible we'll see the longs there, but I'm not sure that I'll be looking to participate unless those look very good. Okay, so price is climbing higher on the hourly, which is expected and to plan. And then from this zone here, we'll be looking for price to break down and create that sell side curve, targeting Monday's low as our fractal market maker sell model, right, before price possibly continues on completing other higher time frame targets. So I hope that's very clear. I hope you understand that concept of fractals and that market maker models, right, because they help with the targets and we know what we want to do for the week and what our main draw of liquidity is, which would be this Monday low most likely. So that is mostly everything. We'll check out the M15 quickly, okay, which is just going to be similar to the 1 hour. We know we're going to have that bullish order flow, but again, we're talking about fractals here, right? While price is building this buy side curve up into this daily area here, what do we have here? We have an M15 market maker buy model. So if you look, we created our sell side curve here, lower lows, lower highs. We found resistance from a higher time frame, which is that 1 hour inverse fair value gap, and then now price has reversed, taking out that previous swing high, creating a new dealing range leg, pulled back, respected another bullish PDA, and then continued higher. We're now creating that buy side curve. So just as we saw on the higher time frames, right, we're creating that sort of triangle and completing that move there. Okay, so that's just another demonstration, more clear because we've almost completed that now, targeting that previous daily high. We're in our London kill zone now, so we'll see, we've pulled back, we'll see if we take some lows here, we might start to build the rest of this buy side curve here, something we could possibly take advantage of, longs, targeting this previous daily high. If we come for this sell side liquidity and then continue creating some sort of thing here to then target the high, right? We may get something that looks good to target that previous daily high here from around this zone here. Okay, so at the moment nothing is clear, but we definitely need a strong low, take this sell side liquidity, and then continue to show the price wants to build higher. We could look for longs somewhere around this zone here, or somewhere within here on the entry time frames, M5, etc. Okay, so that's my outlook so far and for today. We'll go back up to the daily quickly to close this out. As we said, daily and weekly aligns. We look like we're going to continue our bearish trend. Okay, we're just waiting for the lower time frame to also align with that, so we can take advantage of this trend to the downside. For the rest, for this morning, for today, we may see that short-term bullishness that we may be able to take advantage of, looking for longs into this zone here if they're not too risky. So any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys next week.